One, two, three. Sadashiva Samrambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Ishvaro Guratemeti Murtideva Vibhagine Om Vana Charpatedahaya Dakshinamurti Namaha Sarvedanta Siddhanta Gocharam Gocharam Govindam Paramanandam Satiguru Pranatosh Maham Om Shanti Ramji. So we on the verse 67. So you need to stay with me and help me because I made a... Oh, no, it's not. No, I made a note that this is an intense verse. There will be a lot of deep analysis. I'm gonna need the help of my friends. Limitless consciousness is existence and knowledge. We heard that several times. It is self-evident, ever-present, pure, beyond Maya, and it's the joy unconditioned by time-bound experience. So what kind of joy is that, again? It's limitless, self-evident, ever-present, beyond Maya, and it's the joy unconditioned by time-bound experience. It's not a joy or happiness that's dependable on any object of happiness. It's a joy and happiness and contentment which is the very nature of our conscious, limitless existence, as we have covered and determined, analyzed a few times. It's our very, very nature. It's the stuff we are made of. We are made out of limitlessness. Nature is something without which the thing is not really that thing. We cannot separate thing from its nature because its nature is the thing. So we are made out of joy, limitlessness, security, satisfaction, knowledge, consciousness. We feel we know something when we can define it. Definitions separate objects from each another by describing their limits, but the self has no limit. That's very, very nice, huh?
It is.
Huh? Every knowledge we have is about an object, and the object is always limited by the frontier of its appearance, the lineation of its body. It's limited by its body in relation to other bodies. Definitions separate objects from one another by describing their limits, but the self is limitless. How can we define something that has no limits? We need something other than the self to begin draw some conclusions about the difference between two things and seeing what are those attributes that make those two things different, right? So you need plurality to start drawing different attributes so that we determine this is this, this is that, and so on. But how about the self? It's one without a second and does not have any border, limit, boundary, no limitation. There is no like a brother self on a parallel existence. It has no spatial boundary, as do physical objects. So what is the boundary between us, by the way? No? What is the boundary between me and Kalin? Huh? Kalin's there. What is the boundary between me and you? You said you are the boundary? Yeah, that's nice. There is something between us, man. We have to clear that. So there are no boundaries. The boundaries appear only when we take ourselves to be the body. When we take ourselves the body, and then immediately we have demarcation. Time and space come into place. The distance between two bodies produce the effect called time, the time to reach from object A to object B. No? It's all a question of identity, defining ourselves. If we are defined as a body, and then we are in a difficult position. The condition is that I'm a speck in this vast universe where my existence counts to nothing. It's like irrelevant. So we need to learn how to define ourselves properly, and that's why Ishvara sends us the scriptures. So don't behave as if you're a small little thing. You are the totality. You are the substratum of the totality. Yeah? So let's get ourselves right. It has no spatial boundary, as do physical objects, nor has it a temporal boundary, as do thoughts and feelings, nor does it possess certain attributes, and so on. Yet, we are told that the self can be known. You see the difficulty and the contradiction? How can we know something that has no attribute, no quality, has no delineation, it's formless, shapeless, it's all over the place, it's one without the other? How can we know that? We need something so that you can know the totality, right? We need something, but there is not something. We think that we are that something that we're going to know totality, but we don't. No, we don't have any substance. How can we know the self? The self cannot be objectified by this poor little thing called the jiva. Because the self is the very substratum of the jiva and everything else that comes with the jiva. Yet we are told that it can be known. How can we know that which cannot be defined? We were told in verse number 1 that the words of the Upanishads are the only means of knowing the self. And the above verse offers words taken from the Upanishads. We were told that the self is limitless consciousness in this verse, which is existence and knowledge. The Vedantic words indicating the nature of the self are Sat Chitananda, existence, knowledge, limitlessness. So we are provided with a definition that is a set of few words that appear to describe the self by distinguishing it from objects. One of those words, however, is limitless. Let's make a step back here. So, one of the definitions about our limitless existence or self is existence. How can we distinguish the existence of the self from the existence of all objects appearing within the self. The existence of the self, how can we distinguish the existence of the self from the existence of all other objects? Because we know that mithya exists, the world, the universe exists. It's not real, but it exists.
Yeah, but you can dismiss everything, but you cannot dismiss yourself.
Yeah.
All the self doesn't modify the object.
Yeah. Yeah. The self is always ever present. The objects in mithya, they have a provisional existence. They have a temporary existence. They exist, therefore we say, oh, the car exists, the chair exists, Elena exists, and so on, I exist. But it is a provisional existence. So the self is that which is always ever existing. So there is a difference between the existence of the self and the object. The existence of the objects is bound by time. And the self is free from time. It's not bound, it's beyond time. But we always say that the tree exists, everything exists. So, is the existence of the chair different from the existence of the monkey or the tree? It looks like, come on, the monkey is jumping all over the place and the tree is always static there. Isn't it a different kind of existence?
No, it's a different kind of monkey.
It's important to understand because this is what defines the self. The self is the existence, and the existence exists in everything, but it's not as independent, separate existence. It's not that the tree exists. The self exists as the tree. The self is treeing, the self is monkeying, the self is sharing, you know.
So they are all sentient objects, and without awareness they are nothing.
Yeah, the self, the existence is similar to consciousness, but it's more easy to understand the existence when we look into the nature of inert objects which do not reflect consciousness. And then we see, I know it's all consciousness because I know it exists. The self always ever existing. Everything is built by existence consciousness. But a chair or a rock or piece of wood coming from the lake does not have sentience, it does not have a subtle body to reflect consciousness. But we can see its existence because it exists. Therefore we know it's all the self. You remember the self is existence, it is consciousness, and it's all over. So we don't see the consciousness reflect in a piece of wood coming by the sea, but we see its existence, right? So that's the nature of the self. Everything here is made out of existence consciousness, and there is only that. It's limitless.
Can we say that it is not object's nature? Existence is not object nature.
Yeah.
It is borrowed from existence, from real existence.
Yeah. Every existence is given by the self. The self gives existence to everything. All objects in mithya. And we know that we exist, right? Do we have any doubt? No. We can never say I don't exist. To say I don't exist requires something in me that exists to say I don't exist. Therefore, even if I say I don't exist, I'm contradicting myself because I'm affirming my existence by denying my existence. So we always ever exist. There's no such a thing as non-existence. So this is the nature of the self, existence, consciousness. We were told that the self is existence and consciousness, limitless, which is of the nature of knowledge. The Vedantic words indicating the nature of the self are existence, knowledge, limitless, Sat Chitananda. So we are provided with a definition that is a set of words that appear to describe the self by distinguishing it from objects. One of the words, however, is limitless, and that is limitless. That which limitless cannot be separated from other objects. In fact, limitless existence makes distinct objects impossible. But they are possible, but as a projection or a sub or secondary order of reality called mithya. It's empirical order of reality. In fact, limitless existence makes distinct objects impossible. That's the difficult to describe the self. It is language reaching its limits where words become signposts.
Impossible in Satya, possible in Mithya.
Huh?
It's impossible in Satya.
Yeah.
Because it's limitless. But in Mithya, everything is possible.
Yeah. We cannot objectify and know the self as any object. In Mithya we have objects to be known and experienced, right? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, you say in fact limitless existence makes distinct objects impossible.
Yeah.
If they would be real,
right.
That is impossible.
Yeah.
But they are possible because they are not real.
Yeah. You see, the scriptures cannot confuse a wise man. He always reads through and resolves the contradiction right there. As we have no experience of any limitless object, can we experience something that's limitless? No. It has to be limited in space-time. It has to have a name and form, and then we can know it. Can we know when they experience any limitless object? We know the self cannot be known and experienced, so we can stop looking for it as a discrete object in space and time. We just provide the logic so that we stop trying to know and experience the self. It's really pushing us on a corner more and more. There's no way out here. We cannot. We do not, however, experience things that exist and about which we have knowledge. Yeah, we do, however, experience things that exist and we don't have knowledge. We see things for the first time and say, what is that? I have never seen that before. And then we go into Google, and then we know, that was that. Yeah. So we know where to get our knowledge nowadays. It's very easy. So how can existence and knowledge describe the self? It's bringing us into another discussion here. However, we do, however, experience things that exist, but we don't have any knowledge. Before he was saying you have to know the self, but self can be not known or experienced. And then say, but you somehow can experience things that you have no knowledge about it.
Okay. I didn't get this point because he's saying that you experience things that exist and you have knowledge.
Yeah.
Not no knowledge.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misread it. Yeah. Okay, now I have to read it all because I took a totally different road. My mind was going somewhere else here. I always have to try to find some logic, and sometimes we can make logic of mistakes as well. You find the logic. And you know those guys that they know how to have good debates and argue. They can argue. First they come, oh no, I'm going to be for. And then after 2 hours he come, I'm against. And he still beats he wins first with him because he can find some logic. So we can play with words and always find some logic behind the scriptures. We do, however, let's start from the scripture, experience things that exist and about which we have knowledge. Yeah, that's the common thing. We experience things that exist and we have knowledge. So how can existence and knowledge describe the self? Existence and consciousness describe the self. We do, however, experience things that exist and about which we have knowledge. No. So we always know, it's trying to say that we always know things that we have knowledge about. How can we know the self? Self is not an object of knowledge. The self cannot be known as an object. So we don't have any data in here that defines the self for us. So how can we know the self if we do not have any concept of what the self is? Okay? Because the self is not an object. He's just trying to bring to our attention, saying, what kind of knowledge that? You need to have some information about something in order to recognize and know, oh, Jesus is this. You know the story of someone goes to the party and then everybody's asking, so where is Gabriel? The guy from Romania, where is Gabriel? And then, where is Gabriel? And then there is a person talk to Gabriel and drink champagne and they say, man, I'm looking for Gabriel the whole party. And the person is talking to Gabriel for half an hour. Does the person knew Gabriel or did not know Gabriel? He knew Gabriel already, but somehow it was still ignorant about Gabriel. So somebody comes and says, hey, by the way, this is Gabriel. Oh man, I knew you, but I did not know that I knew you. So sometimes we may have knowledge of something that we don't know, but here the point is however, we know things about which we have some knowledge. We experience things that, okay, I know what it is. All the objects we perceive exist in time, so their existence is not limitless. Are we then confronted with two kinds of existence, a limit existence and a limitless existence? That's very nice. We know only objects which are defined by names and form, and they are all limited, and there is no such thing as knowing or having an object which is defined as limitless. That's to bring to our attention that the self is not an object of knowledge and experience. It cannot be defined by any attribute. And there are no two kinds of existence, a limited existence and a limitless. Limited existence would require that which is that which does not exist in the beginning nor in the end. Limited existence would require that which does not exist in the beginning nor in the end to be somewhat exist in the middle. Are we following? I'm tired today. I was wishing this paragraph would come in the morning. But are you guys following? Huh? We have questions? So you interrupt me, okay?
So maybe you read Alenia again.
Okay. Limited existence would require that which does not exist. Okay? We have a limited existence, so it requires something that does not exist in the beginning, exists during a period of time, and then does not. This is the definition of mithya, is that which did not exist before, exists in between, and does not. This is the limited existence, but we have asserted before that existence is limitlessness, so there is no such a thing as two existence, one limit existence. Existence is only existence. It's limitless, but appear as limited by objects. Because objects, they come, they hang out for a little bit, and then they subside. That's the nature of mithya. And how would existing, how would its existence be maintained for the set amount of time? So how the existence of something would be maintained for a set of time? Oh no, I don't go there. I even cancel that. Forget it. It's too much. How can that which was not come to be? Again, mithya. How that which is not came to be? Nothing comes from nothing. The reason is simple. His conclusion, inescapable. Change is an illusion. Nothing comes from nothing. There's nothing that can come out of not being. There is no such a thing as non-existence. The reason is simple. His conclusion, inescapable. Change is an illusion. There is only the self appearing as if it's changing. All objects in awareness appear as a changing phenomenon. But the very existence of something proves the fact that those objects are not the self. Because it cannot, an existence is not something that can exist. Not exist before, exist for a little bit, maintain certain existence and then go out of existence. We know that there is no such thing as non-existence. Everything in existence is always ever present. It's existence. But the mithya is just a superimposition or a projection on our own conscious existence. This is a way to say that existence and knowledge are identical. Posterity, what is posterity again, James?
History.
Huh?
History.
History, well, I mean, it's absurd, huh? Why not to use the poor word history for the, single people like us,
He wants to make the language rich.
Yeah.
It says all future generations of people.
Otherwise he thinks it's boring repeating the same words.
Yeah.
That's what he does.
Yeah, he's a very cultural.
Yeah.
They have the same word in Spanish, and we have to have it in the language as well.
Posterity.
Posteridad.
Yeah.
Es lo mismo.
Posterity. What is posterity again?
Actually, we got a good definition for that.
No, it's not.
It says
That's what
Future generation. Oh, future generation. Ah,
Es lo mismo.
They come from Star Trek.
okay.
Good job.
Keep trying.
Okay, he's gonna talk about Parmenides and so on. I don't want to go there. The Bhagavad Gita, one of its source texts.
Thank you. Can you count and go there?
Man, we are
108?
no, we are on the verse. I'm trying to just.
Just to have Q&A.
I just try to screw to keep the core meaning of the verse, because it goes into so many analyses about philosophy and philosophers, and I'm trying to avoid it, because if we go into that, we're going to start smoking.
Let's see that part.
But he says, Parmenides, he says something very interesting. He says, for non-being does not exist. Because if it would exist, then it would contradict itself. Non-being does not exist.
Yeah. Otherwise, it contradicts.
Hard thinking.
Yeah, you
But
see,
it's very
beautiful
clever.
thinking, you know. But you want to go, be willing to go there, you know. It's really fine. I'm not in the mood. I don't know. I mean, you guys knock yourself off, you know. Make a circle.
Discussion tomorrow morning.
Okay, and moreover, all this. How you think?
Hair splitting.
Splitting hair logic is not necessarily conducive to self-knowledge, okay? It's helpful, and if your mind is strong and fresh and following the logic, it's good.
Plus, if you have still any doubts, then it could be useful.
Yeah. So there can be no such a thing as limited existence. That which for a time then is not. The implication of this truth radically opposes our usual way of thinking about things. It compels us to reject our perception of time-bound experience as being real. So existence has to be that which is always existing. It compels us to reject our perception of time-bound existence as being real. All existence then must be limitless. So he's equating existence. Before it was equating knowledge, consciousness with existence. Now it's equating with limitlessness. It's just a logic to back up our certainty of the nature of the self, consciousness, existence, knowledge, and limitlessness. All existence then must be limitless, for the only thing that could limit it would be non-existence. That's very nice, you just said. So when we perceive objects, we in fact experience limitless existence, appearing as objects, just a projection. The perceived object as an independent event in space in time is as unreal as the snake in the rope. What is real is existence, limitlessness. The self alone exists. That's the logic behind all of that. The above analysis of existence also applies to knowledge. If objects are real, limitless existence, our knowledge to be true to the object must be equally limitless. If only the self exists, only the self can be known. Knowledge of objects is a succession of thoughts. So it's saying that the only knowledge that is really substantial is self-knowledge. If objects are real, limitless existence, our knowledge to be true the object must be equally limitless. But we don't have the knowledge of all objects in creation. If only the self exists through the objects, our knowledge of the self is the only substantial knowledge. It's the knowledge of that by which, knowing that, you know the essence of every object. Knowledge of objects is a succession of thoughts. But the serious thinking requires an interim stage in which one thought has ended and another thought has not yet begun. That's the background, okay? Between the objects, it's the awareness or the knowledge, consciousness, the witnessing of the phenomena. Has not yet begun, or else we would not be able to distinguish one thought from another. So one thought cannot witness the other or distinguish or be conscious of the other. The thoughts we have already determined long ago that they are inert, they are not self-conscious. We need this background of which is not a thought, which is the very conscious existence. This interim stage is an absence of thought from the standpoint of objective knowledge. But what is this interim stage in itself? It can only be us, awareness, the knower, subject, the background, in which all thoughts appear. And this awareness is ever present and unaffected by the constant flow of thoughts that come and go, which can be nothing but awareness, despite their apparent diversity and seeming independence. Okay, we're gonna get in there, huh? Let's keep working. And the bad news is the next one I made a note to say, oh my God, very intense.
It's already very intense.
The next one I wrote, like, the first one I wrote, heavy duty stuff. The second one is very intense and dense. So I'm warning you.
Am I right? It's going round and round and round from different perspectives, but all the time like this. The head starts to spin.
Yeah, we're almost there. If only the self exists, only the self can be enjoyed. Only the self can be known, only the self experienced, and so on. There is only the self. So all experiential joy, seemingly dependent upon time-bound objects and circumstances, is a window opening into limitless joy, which is the nature of the self. Every joy, every experience is an experience of the self. What this is saying is that every object of experience is a window of opportunity for us to identify and realize the self, because there is only the self. So the object can be a nice advertisement. So all joy, experiential joy, seemingly dependent upon time-bound objects and circumstances, since there is only the self, all joy is actually come between those gaps of the thoughts. When the mind gets resolved, and then there is the joy. It's just pointing out to the fact that the joy we get from in between the thoughts and objects are the same thing. In between the thoughts, all the joy is the joy of the nature of the self. And the object may help us to understand that. You understand? If we follow the analysis as presented by Vedanta, we understood, okay, it's okay, let's chase the object, because by and by it's going to lead us to the understanding that the joy is not coming from the object, but from the subject. Which is the very nature of limitless self. It's not come from the limit object, but it's come from the limitless nature of the self. When we think joy is in the object, the self forgets itself. As it seems, yeah? The self gets covered up by rajas and tamas and forgets its fundamental nature. As strange as it sounds, and begins chasing the illusions produced by ignorance, which is again running out chasing objects, which again can only manifest in the self as the self, because everything resolves itself as the self, since there are no separation between objects and the self. We experience satisfaction when the subject and the object cease to appear as distinct, and we realize as one, no distance, no separation. So the subject-object somehow cease, collapse. We then no longer regard ourselves as separate from that which we desire. And we know that we are everything, that is knowledge at work, the objects resolve themselves in me. There are no boundaries between us. We no longer regard ourselves from separate from our desires. When we know the self, all sense of separation ends. And when we know the self as ourself, always important to make that point. We don't know the self as anything other than ourselves, because there is only one self, and Tati Vanasi, we are that. That's when Jivas merge or dissolves themselves into awareness, in their understanding, they somehow they are resolved as awareness. The pain of longing and the fleeting satisfaction of possession arise from our identification with an individual body-mind. All the pleasures of pain we experience in life occur to this jiva phenomenon, which is a byproduct of identification with the body-mind construct. We are always seeking to erase that sense of individuality, which is the root of sorrow. How we try to do that? We try to erase the sense of individuality, of separation, independent existence. We try to join with other objects to get a feel of non-duality, of oneness. And the most common one is to try to find another jiva so that I can join and get a sense of non-separation, of no isolation. What is it? Yeah. So that our sense of individuality may be suspended. Because it is the root cause of sorrow. We all know, the moment that we define ourselves as the body, we're in trouble. Oh, I'm so alone. There are more than 7 billion and plus other jivas, and I'm just one, so this is really bad news. I'm just a little thing, and there are so many like me. And I want something so that I can be part. I want to be part of a family, part of a church, part of a culture, part of a nation. I want to, to expand my sense of identity, because it feels very, very lonely, and it's not a good feeling to be stuck as the body-mind. We are always seeking the self, whether we know it or not. We are always seeking. We seek the self by trying to get objects, join, connect with objects. We think that we are doing all this chasing for the sake of the objects. We are just trying to re-establish our sense of limitlessness. We are limitless inside. Somehow our nature compels us to try to resolve this unnatural sense of limitation imposed by this identification as the independent individual body-mind. When we are told that the self is limitless existence, knowledge and joy, we may think, how can I experience this self? Because for sure I will not experience it now. How can I experience the self? I'm certainly not experiencing it now. The answer is that the answer is that we experience the self now. Every experience is the self-experience itself. We are simply misinterpreting the experience in the reflect awareness, as we call the ego, which identifies with apparent objects. We are simply misinterpreting the experience in the reflect awareness we call the ego, which identifies with apparent objects. So we are not doing that from the standpoint of knowledge, but from the standpoint of this misconception, misidentification. So we are defining ourselves mistakenly as the construct. The ego is the self dreaming.
That is the thing.
Yeah. The ego is the self dreaming. Vedanta is our wake-up call. When we dream, we manufacture all the people and objects which seem to exist independently of us. And we do that in the dream state. We project. Everything we need is in there. The self, through its mysterious power of Maya, manifests all that appears as the world and that seems to exist independently of us. Us refers to eyes awareness. So everything that Maya projects appears as other than ourselves and independent of ourselves. Then the dream. Through the teachings of Vedanta, we realize the self is all there is, ever was and ever will be. There is only the self. Then the dream ends, and all the phantoms that torment us due to ignorance of our true nature dissolve. And that's called freedom. Okay, we have covered that one. Tomorrow we have a very intense and dense verse, but I will come with a better voice and fresher energy, and we're gonna survive it. Let's give our thanks to the Sampradaya. Sadashiva Samrambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Isvaro Gurate Meti Mochi Veda Vibhagine Yomavada Vyapata Dehaya Dakshinamurtiya Namaha Sava Vedanta Siddhanta Gocharanta Magocharam Govindam Paran Manandam Satyaguru Pranatoshmaham. Om Shanti. Thank you, Lords. Thank you, Shankara, Ramji, and all of us doing the good work.